All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something that literally sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, but it's absolutely real. We're looking at an unprecedented collision between ancient religious authority and bleeding-edge technology. It's a deeply philosophical topic that fundamentally redefines what it means to be human in the 21st century. We are examining a truly historic moment, the Vatican's profound, incredibly stark warning to humanity about artificial intelligence. Because this isn't just your standard debate about job losses or data privacy. We're talking about the human soul. We're talking about the illusion of algorithmic ethics. And, as we'll see, a terrifying new economic reality.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just look at the specific, highly intentional language the Vatican uses here. Artificial intelligence must be disarmed. Think about that for a second. They didn't say AI needs to be regulated. They didn't say, we should monitor it for errors or put up guardrails. No, they used the word disarmed. That is a massive, deliberate use of military terminology being applied to a civilian technology. According to our source analysis, this aggressive phrasing was chosen specifically to shake people up and capture the world's attention. The spiritual leadership of over 1 billion people is categorizing the current trajectory of artificial intelligence not as a helpful tool, but as a weapon. A weapon that, if left totally unchecked, could suppress human freedom and fundamental human dignity.
To really grasp the sheer gravity of this, we got to look at the room where this declaration was actually made. It's May 2026. The Pope is presenting the Magnifico Humanitas, or Great Humanity, encyclical. And sitting right there, front row and center, listening to the Pope, is Chris Olah. He's a co-founder of Anthropic. Anthropic is, of course, one of the absolute titans of the AI world, responsible for the Claude models. We're talking about algorithms capable of reasoning, writing complex code, and basically doing work that used to be totally exclusive to the human mind. Think about the surreal juxtaposition here. You have the spiritual leader of 1.5 billion Catholics directly addressing the architect of the world's most powerful artificial intelligence. As our sources point out, this is basically like John D. Rockefeller or Andrew Carnegie sitting in the front row at the Vatican during the absolute peak of the Industrial Revolution. It's a completely historic moment. The architects of our new reality being called to account by the guardians of an ancient faith.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because to understand the scale of this warning, we actually need to rewind exactly 135 years. Back in 1891, the Vatican dropped a famous document called Rerum Novarum. It was basically their big response to the Industrial Revolution, dealing with the really harsh realities of factories, workers' rights, and this massive fundamental shift in how humanity worked. Now fast forward exactly 135 years to this 2026 encyclical, Magnifico Humanitas, which deals with the AI revolution. It is a highly, highly intentional echo. The Vatican is signaling that the disruption we are facing today with AI is on the exact same scale, if not way larger than the transition from the farm to the factory. But as we're about to see, the rules of the game have fundamentally changed since the 1800s.
But here's where that historical analogy starts to break down, and in a really alarming way. As our sources analyze, back in 1891, sure, there was visible, physical conflict, but it was built on mutual dependency. The factory owner, the capitalist, desperately needed the human worker, right? A factory without human hands was just a useless building full of metal. They might have hated each other, but they had to sit down and negotiate wages and hours because they literally needed each other to create value. Today, in the AI era, that mutual dependency is just vanishing. The new tech monopolies don't need human hands to generate value anymore. They need silicon, they need tons of water to cool their data centers, they need massive amounts of electricity, and they need AI agents. The human worker is rapidly becoming structurally unnecessary to the whole production process.
And this brilliantly illustrates a terrifying concept explored in our sources called techno-feudalism. Under this system, human labor is pretty much obsolete. So instead of being a worker who can actually negotiate for a share of the profits, society just becomes entirely dependent on a few digital landlords. And these landlords own and control the algorithmic infrastructure of the entire world. In this new paradigm, we are no longer partners in production. At best, we're just the consumer base, right? The data source, the users begging the algorithm not to ban our accounts. At worst, we're viewed as entirely replaceable ballast. It's a massive shift from a world where your labor actually gave you leverage to a world where a handful of tech lords hold literally all the cards simply because they own the digital air we breathe.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that this philosophical dread, it isn't just theoretical. It's grounded in hard, undeniable facts, and it's happening right now. We're seeing the explosive rise of autonomous AI agents across multiple industries. For example, we have reports of Anthropic's Claude being deployed as a fully autonomous financial analyst for massive institutions. In marketing and business, there are actual case studies of a single AI agent replacing entire 5-person human teams, effectively taking over client communication and integration tasks and doing it flawlessly. And on the darker side, IBM reports the rise of the vibe coder.
This is a hacker with minimal technical skills who simply instructs an AI agent to design, advance, and execute full kill-chain cyber attacks. The machine is doing the heavy lifting, completely autonomously.
To put that into perspective, to really show the scale at which this is operating, just consider this number: $2 trillion. That is the staggering size of Norway's sovereign wealth fund, the biggest in the world, and they are actively deploying Anthropic's AI tools to perform complex financial analysis right now. They have AI systems dynamically querying thousands of portfolio companies every single day. The AI is doing the heavy, complex research and data extraction that used to require absolute armies of junior analysts working around the clock. When the entities managing trillions of dollars transition their core analytical work from human brains over to AI agents, you know the paradigm shift isn't just approaching anymore, it has fully arrived.
And when you look at the raw economics of this automation, as reported by cybersecurity experts at IBM, it gets even crazier. Imagine crafting a highly sophisticated, hyper-personalized cyber attack. A human hacker might need, say, 16 hours to scrape social media, write the malicious code, draft the perfect localized text, and launch the campaign. An AI agent? It can do the exact same thing in 5 minutes. Literally, 16 hours versus 5 minutes. The economics of time and efficiency are so overwhelmingly in favor of the machine that human involvement actually becomes a bottleneck. The machine doesn't just assist the human anymore, it vastly outpaces us. And as the source notes, humans are not going to magically get vastly faster at these tasks, but the AI absolutely will.
So, if the machine doesn't need us, who holds the power? That is the chilling question at the absolute center of this explainer. If our labor is no longer the engine of the economy, well, our traditional leverage is totally gone. And this brings us right back to the Vatican's core concern. The transition we are living through right now isn't just an economic diagnosis, it is a profound philosophical crisis regarding the survival of human dignity itself.
Now, the analysis from our sources suggests that the Vatican's approach here, basically pleading with tech leaders for algorithmics, might be structurally flawed from the get-go. The underlying logic is pretty stark. These tech giants create massively disruptive AI. They receive a nice moral blessing from traditional authorities, and then they just walk right out and monopolize the digital infrastructure anyway. The sources point out that asking these corporations to voluntarily regulate themselves when they have absolutely zero financial incentive to do so is honestly like asking the fox to guard the henhouse. A moral plea without the actual economic leverage that workers had back in 1891 might just be a beautiful, pacifying illusion.
But honestly, the threat goes way deeper than just losing our jobs or our economic leverage. It cuts right to the human soul. Our sources highlight a really disturbing trend called the AI psychologist trap. Large numbers of people are actually starting to use AI chatbots as their therapists, confiding their deepest, most personal problems to a machine. People are falling into a psychological trap where they're seeking empathy from an algorithm that is merely emulating human emotion by mathematically predicting the next word in a sentence. This is the ultimate danger the Vatican is warning us about. We aren't just letting AI do our spreadsheets anymore. We're outsourcing our vulnerability, our emotional connections, and our very humanity to a server farm.
So the crucial point is, how do we survive this? How do we actually adapt to a world where raw intelligence is just a cheap commodity? Well, the consensus across our sources is pretty clear. We have to fiercely protect what makes us biologically and spiritually human. That means prioritizing deep, physical, bodily connections, actually existing in the real physical world, not just through a digital interface. It means nurturing genuine, messy, human empathy and building real-world communities. And perhaps most importantly, it means actively rejecting the narrative of technological inevitability. We have to absolutely refuse the idea that we are just biological machines destined to be replaced by better digital ones.
Because as one of our key sources powerfully puts it, the future is not what they give you, it's what you take from them. We're constantly being told that mass AI replacement is just this inevitable force of nature, like gravity or the weather. But that's a complete myth. The decision to replace a whole team of human analysts with an AI agent, that isn't some inevitable fact of technology. It's a calculated business and political decision made by human executives to cut costs and maximize shareholder value. The power dynamic of techno-feudalism relies entirely on our silence and our passive acceptance of this so-called inevitable future.
Which brings us to the absolute ultimate question you have to ask yourself. As these technologies just keep accelerating and ancient institutions are out there pleading for ethical constraints that honestly might never come, you have a choice.
Are you going to actively cultivate your irreplaceable human empathy, your real-world connections, and your agency so you can be a true partner in the human future? Or will you surrender your focus, your emotions, and your labor to become nothing more than replaceable ballast in the algorithmic machine? The technology is already here, but what happens next to the human soul? Well, that is still entirely up to us. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and above all else, stay human.